Hi everyone! The goal of this video is to talk about Essay 1 and give you some tips as you begin drafting your essay. The first thing I want to talk about are your thesis statements. It's really important that this is solid and focused so that your essay can stay on track as you begin to write it. Now, the first thing you need to consider is after you've brainstormed, after you've discussed these readings and thought about them, do you think that the writers have more similar views or more different views? Do you think it's a balance of the two? Your answer to that question, which can be completely personal, will drive your thesis statement. So you want to be able to answer that question before you write your thesis. Now I have two different examples of ways you could write your thesis statement. And remember that in your introduction you will be summarizing both articles, so you'll be giving the full names of the writers as well as the full titles of the articles. The first thesis statement that I have starting here, it gives sort of all the main points that are going to be discussed in the paper. Though Rubin and Diner Biswas both admit the complexity of money and happiness, as well as the impact of the comparing mind and hedonic treadmill, they differ in their perceptions of how to spend money and how to feel about spending money. So in this one, I start with a phrase that shows a similarity between them, right? They're going to talk about the complexity of money and happiness. They also share an idea of the comparing mind and the hedonic treadmill. So these are my similarities I will be talking about in the paper. Then in the second half of the thesis, I use the verb differ to show they differ in their perceptions of how to spend money and how to feel about spending money. So then it sounds like later in the essay, after I give the similarities, I'll talk about these two main differences. So your thesis can really set up the organization for your paper. This one is sort of very direct and obvious. However, you don't have to do it this way. You might be used to listing your main points in the thesis, but it's not anything that has to be set in stone. You can also do more of a free form thesis statement where you admit the similarities and differences, but maybe you don't spell it all out specifically. These two thesis statements do that. So both articles admit that the correlation between money and happiness is complex and subjective. Yet, shifting, the writers differ in their interpretation of wants versus needs. Rubin favors pursuing some of your wants, while Diner and Diner Biswas encourage readers to be happy with what they have. So I didn't give specific subpoints that I would be talking about, but I gave sort of the general overview of the essay. This one is also a good example of how you can do the thesis in 2 sentences versus 1 sentence, because it's a lot, and you want to make sure that you're not getting run-ons in there. Alright, the second thing I want to talk about is the body of the essay. You're going to start creating this week, and there is a formula that can work pretty well for a comparison-contrast essay when you're using point-by-point organization. The first thing I want to talk about is the very beginning of the paragraph. I use a transitional phrase here to emphasize how the reader should shift to read this paragraph. That is followed by a topic sentence, which outlines the main point of the paragraph in connection with the thesis statement. Foremost, Rubin's message diverges from the more conservative theories of Diner and Diner Biswas when she encourages readers to follow their needful desires. Okay, so here I'm talking about a difference. You can see I use the word diverges. Think about the verbs that you're using instead of saying said or wrote. Think about other ways that you can imply similarities and differences in the way that you're using verbs in your writing. Okay, so following my topic sentence, note that I did quote her here, so I have given an in-text citation for that. Then I give an example from Rubin's text. So here I use a signal phrase. In her essay, July by Some Happiness, Rubin reflects. So that's a signal phrase. You give the name of the writer or the name of the article and the writer. You have a verb, and then I go into summary at this point. I summarize some points that she makes to support the topic sentence of the paragraph, including a quotation right here. And then when I'm done my summary, I give the page numbers for the pages I took the information from. After this, I have some analysis. So here is my personal analysis of what she says in 1 sentence here. Then I have a big shift here. On the other hand, this is really important that in the middle of these paragraphs, when you shift from one source to the other source, that you have some kind of transition to help the reader know the shift is coming. So on the other hand, Diener and Diener-Biswas have concluded that spending too much can lead to materialism. So here I'm showing their perspective and how it differs from hers. I do admit that Rubin does warn of these consequences, but I explain how Diener and Diener-Biswas say that it's a little bit different from her. So I continue to go, citing as I go along. This is a quotation from the Diener article, so I have the page number here. Here is something that Rubin said, a summary. I've cited it here. Again, paraphrase of Diener and Diener-Biswas, page number here. Now, I've given my topic sentence, I've given 2 examples. What do I do at the end of the paragraph? So at this point, I'm analyzing. I'm pushing the ideas deeper and further and trying to think about, what does this mean? What's the point of this? Why do they maybe disagree about this point? So at this point, I try to push the analysis a little bit further and wrap up the thoughts of the paragraph. If you have any questions, let me know. I hope that this model will help you think through how you're going to write the essay. And I think if you just try to keep it simple and follow this template, it will work out really well, especially for your first draft, and then I can give you some feedback. Have a great week.